everything I'm telling today is not there as an answer in the book. I'll be telling you is about the lenses. Okay. Most probably this whole year it is going to be like this only, and I wonder if you will ever have a chance to come to the department before giving the final exam. So this is just like how I will be taking a practical class. So please listen and try to understand whatever I am telling. So in this particular section, what you will have to do is they will give you some lenses, and you have to look and recognize whether they are spherical lenses, whether they are cylindrical lenses, whether they are concave, whether they are convex. And once you recognize, you have to answer the questions what they will be asking, like where these lenses are used and all those things. So I will be teaching you all that in this particular class. So we will start with this a little bit of introduction. So we will start with visual acuity. So what is visual acuity? Each and every one of you will have to write visual acuity of your of the case that is given, right? I so much writing like I saw case, you will be writing your what does it actually mean? Nothing but defined as the smallest detail that can be identified by the spatial resolution by your brain, okay, in your visual cortex. In other words, it is nothing but a measure of how well a person can see a distant or a near, to say how much clear his vision is, how much clarity or how much sharpness is there in his vision. So that is defined as visual acuity. So in practice, how do we quantify or assess a person's visual acuity? So what you people are doing is bedside visual acuity. Because you are not you don't have access to any kind of instruments, what you will be doing is you will be just closing one eye of the patient and asking if he can see your finger. So we were telling about, we were talking about visual acuity, how to quantify or assess the visual acuity. So what you people are doing, the counting fingers thing, is called as the bedside visual acuity. But actually, how do you quantify? So this is by using the Snellen's chart. There was a scientist called who is a Dutch ophthalmologist called Herman Snellen, who has designed this particular chart. Okay, so this chart consists of block letters. Just have a look at the letters that are there on the Snellen's chart, and can you find out one particular speciality in the letters that have been chosen? Anyone?
The mirror images are same as the original, ma'am?
Yes, exactly. So letters like S, B and all are not chosen because in the mirror they will apply ulta, isn't it? So these are the letters which are chosen, and they are all block letters, and they are arranged in such a way that they decrease in size line by line. Okay, and how is the decrease? It is corresponding to the distance at which the line of letters is normally visible. That means your visual acuity is represented in the form of a fraction in which the numerator stands for the distance at which the person is being tested, and the denominator stands for the distance at which this particular font can be viewed by a normal person.
Understood? So when we say 6 by 60, that is this letter T is seen by a patient by a normal patient who does not have any kind of refractive error, by a patient from a distance of 60 meters. Similarly, these two are seen by patients, normal patients, by 36 meters. Understood? No? So like that. So if a person is sitting at 6 meters and he is able to read only the T, that is the top letter, it means his vision is reduced by so much. A normal person could see that by 60 meters, at the distance of 60 meters, and this person is able to see it by 6 meters when he is only from 6 meters. That means his vision has dropped down to such a level. So that is how you quantify. Did you understand? This is the basis of Snellen's chart, and each of this letter here you see is termed as a Snellen's test type. Okay, Snellen's test type. And the specialty is that from that particular distance, each letter subtends an angle of 5 degrees, visual angle of 5 degrees. That means from 60 meters, this particular letter subtends an angle of 5 degrees, and this one from 36 meters. So each and every Snellen's test type will be subtending an angle of 5 degrees only at the suitable distance. Understood now? So that is about your Snellen's chart. So what do we do when the patient is illiterate or there are children and then they don't know how to recognize the letters? So in that case, we have what is called as key charts. So we just have to ask the patient in which direction the limbs are pointed. So in this, it is pointed towards right, here it is down, like that the patient will say, and accordingly you will record the vision as 660, 636, 624, like that. Okay, so a normal person, normal visual acuity, a person who does not have any kind of ophthalmic problem or refractive error will be having a normal vision of 6 by 6. Okay, now such a person who does not have any kind of refractive error is called as an emmetrope. So what happens in an emmetrope? This is a normal eye. So all our normal eye is designed for distant vision. So the rays that are coming from distance, they are parallel. So these rays are made to come to a point focus on the sentinent layer of retina. What do we mean by sentinent layer of retina? That is the layer of rods and cones. So that is the most sensitive layer, the photoreceptor layer. So if the image, see, actually the retina is like a screen of a camera. So unless the rays form an image on the screen, it is not perceived. Okay, so when the eye is at rest, that means when the patient is not accommodating, if the parallel rays of light manage to make a point focus on the sentinent layer of retina, then the image is appreciated very clearly. So such an eye condition is called as emmetropia, that means free of all refractive errors. Okay, so now let us just see the difference between a distant vision and a near vision. So when you view anything in the distance, all the rays of light that are coming from that distant object, they're all parallel to each other. Okay, and our normal eye is designed for this distant vision. So there are two refracting surfaces. That one is the cornea, maximum refraction up to 40 diopters takes place, and then we have the lens in which the remaining 20 diopters takes place. So together they refract and try to bring the image right on the sentinent layer, that is on the layer of rods and cones. Okay, so this is for distant vision. So suppose you get an object near, and say it comes to say 33 centimeters or 16 inches from the eye level. So then what happens? The rays that are coming from the object are no more parallel to each other. They are divergent because it is brought very close. The rays from the object are divergent. So when they are divergent and still you have to see the image, what should happen? Otherwise, if the same refractive power was there, this image would have fallen somewhere this side, behind the retina. But still it is able, you are able to appreciate it on the retina itself. Why? Because the refracting power of the eye has increased. How is it possible? It's not possible to change the refracting power of the cornea because it is attached all over. But what happens is the lens, because it is suspended, it changes its configuration and it becomes more convex. So its refracting power or converging power increases, so that the image is again brought to focus on the retina. So this process, what is it called? Anyone? What is it called by which the lens becomes more convex and its refracting power increases? What is it's called? Yeah, very good. It's called as accommodation. So this is what, say, look at these pictures. So this is an eye which is relaxed. That means eye at rest. That means where the eye is not accommodating. That means the ciliary body is relaxed. So when the ciliary body is relaxed, the zonules are all tight. Ciliary body is relaxed, zonules are tight, and this is the normal configuration of the lens, wherein the anterior surface of the lens is flatter when compared to the posterior surface of the lens. Okay, like this, the picture on the left. Now, as you get the object nearer, the lens has to become more convex. For that, what happens is your ciliary muscle contracts. Ciliary muscle contracts, and when it contracts, the suspensory ligaments become very slack or loose, like this. So when they become loose, actually the suspensory ligaments are attached to the anterior, few suspensory ligaments are attached to the anterior capsule. So when they become loose, the lens, the anterior capsule of the lens is free to become fat. Okay, so what happens is it bulges and it becomes more convex. So this is called as an accommodated lens, or a lens in which the ciliary body is contracted and the suspensory ligaments are slack and the lens becomes more convex. Okay, so that is how we are able to see distant and near vision. This is for a normal emmetropic eye. So how do we test for near vision testing? There are near vision testing cards. The design is just like your Snell lens only. Only difference is this card has to be held at a distance of 33 centimeters or 16 inches from the eye. And you will ask the patient to read. Okay. Every time, whenever you are testing, one thing you have to remember is you have to test each eye separately for distance as well as near. Okay. Now, so this was all about normal eye, normal emmetropic eye. For distance, how do you check? For near, how do you check? Now, what are refractive errors? Look at this picture on your screens. This is the object, and this is a normal emmetropic eye in which the parallel rays of light are undergoing refraction and an image is formed on the retina. Okay. Now, if the eye is long or more convex, then what happens? The parallel rays of light are forming, they converge in front of the retina. So they form a image in front of the retina. So this is myopic eye. Okay. And in case of emmetropic eye, the eye is too small or too flat, because of which it is not able to, the rays are not able to converge on the retina. They will go behind the retina and an image is formed behind the retina, that is hypermetropia. So in myopia, the image is formed in front of the retina. So in order to take this image back, what we are doing is we are trying to diverge the rays before they reach the eye by putting concave lenses. Okay, so the treatment of myopia is concave lenses. So by putting concave lenses, what happens is instead of parallel rays, diverging rays are entering the eye. So it is able to form the image right over the retina. Conversely, if you take an hypermetropic eye, then the image is formed behind the retina because if the eye is too small or too flat, because of which it is not able to converge so much so that it is brought in front. So for that, we are aiding the eye by giving a converging lens or convex lens which is placed in front of the eye in the form of spectacles or contact lens. Understood? So this is the basis of treating your myopia and hypermetropia using concave or convex lenses. Now we will come to the actual class, today's class of what are ophthalmic lenses and how do you recognize them. So what are ophthalmic lenses? So ophthalmic lenses are nothing but a refractive media which are enclosed by two refracting surfaces. That means there are two refracting surfaces, at least one of which will be curved. The other might be curved or it might be plane. So these lenses are given for correcting vision in a person with refractive error. Look at this. So as I was telling you, the ophthalmic lenses will have two refracting surfaces. Any one at least should be curved surface. For example, this is a plano convex lens. So one surface is plane, one is convex. If you take this plano concave, this is a biconvex and this is a biconcave lens. So these are the different forms of spherical lenses. So this is just a repetition. So what is happening in myopia, because the image is falling in front, we are giving biconcave lenses so that the incident rays of light become slightly divergent and the image is able to form over the retina. Similarly, in hypermetrop, what we are trying to do is we are trying to aid the converging by giving a convex lens or converging lens so that the image falls over the retina instead of behind the retina. Okay. Now, these are the instruments which you will have to recognize. So what is this? This you must have seen, if at all you have entered ophthalmology this year, you must have seen, or you must have seen in any eye clinic. This is called as a vision drum. So this vision drum can be rotated and on each side it will be in different languages. See, this is called a C chart or Ludlam's chart. Behind this will be E chart, and here there is alphabets, English alphabet. Sometimes there will be numbers. Okay, so whatever, all these, the entire vision drum will have Snellen's chart. So all these are Snellen's test types only. Okay. Now, what is this? Has anybody seen this in any ophthalmic clinic or in the OPD? This is called as a trial set. So what is a trial set? Trial set is a set of trial lenses. That means, so whenever a person comes to you with defective vision and you see that he has some kind of refractive error, how do you decide how much refractive error he has? Okay, and then for that you have retinoscopy for where you will estimate the refractive error of a person, or more recently we have autorefractive meter. That is nothing but your computer vision testing, isn't it? So by that you get a rough idea about what or how much refractive error the person is having. So, and then you will try those glasses on the patient before writing a glass prescription for him. So for trying, you have so many different varieties of lenses. So that is called as a trial set. Okay, so this trial set consists of concave or minus spherical lenses, convex or plus spherical lenses. Then we have concave cylindrical lenses and we have convex cylindrical lenses. Okay, so we have lenses starting from powers minus 0.25 up to minus 20. Okay, so till 4 they are in the intervals of 0.25. That means it starts with minus 1.2 minus 0.125, then minus 0.25, 0.10.75, 1, like that up to 4. Then from 4 to 6 it is in the intervals of 0.5. That means you have a 6, minus 6, and then you have 6.5, then you have 7, 7.5, like that. Okay, and beyond that you have in the intervals of 1. So like that you have up to 20. Why do you have so much less difference in the beginning is because most of the people in the population will have refractive error up to 6. After that it is little rare. So for that, for fine tuning and for convenience sake, they have made the trial sets in this way. Similarly, you have in plus lenses also. For cylinders, you have from minus 0.25 cylinder up to 6, only up to 6. Similarly, plus 0.25 up to plus 6. Why only this much? Because a brain cannot accept a cylinder more than minus 4.5 or plus 4.5. That's why maximum of 6 only is there. Understood? Whereas in spherical lenses, you have up to 20. So this is the explanation about your trial sets. Trial sets are nothing but a set of lenses, spherical and cylindrical, concave and convex, in order to show the patient which is good for that particular patient. Okay, so along with the trial set, we have this. What is this? Anybody knows what this is? Here, this picture. Anyone? Does anyone know what this picture is? You can just attempt to answer. What is this? This picture I am pointing out to here. This is called as a trial frame. So you put that, because you cannot give the glasses to the patient, isn't it? So you put a trial frame. This trial frame will have slots for inserting the lenses. It will have markings of axis in the outermost. Okay, so you will keep the cylindrical lenses in the outermost slot. You'll keep the spherical lenses in the inner slot. One slot is there close to the eye, that is for near vision, and one you have outside, and that is for putting the occluder. See, this is how a patient will look. So this outermost thing is to put the occluder. The innermost one is for putting the near vision glasses, and the middle ones are for spherical and cylindrical lenses. Okay. Now, let's see a few things apart from the spherical and cylindrical lenses. We have a few important things in the trial set. What are they? This is one. This is called as the occluder. Occluder means you will, when you put this, this is nothing but a shield, a black shield. So when you shield this eye, here the left eye has been occluded. So in that case, the patient will be able to see only from the right eye. So this is important to check the person's vision individually. So you need to record a person's right eye separately and left eye separately. Otherwise, what will happen? Even if there is zero vision in one eye, the patient will not realize because he will be seeing clearly with the other eye, isn't it? That's why you need to check each eye separately. For that sake, you will use the occluder. This is the occluder. Okay. Then apart from the occluder, you have three other important things. One is the pinhole, which we will learn in detail. The other two are, this is called as the stenopic slit and this is called as the Jackson's cross cylinder. So these two, the Jackson's cross cylinder and the stenopic slit, are used to fine tune the astigmatic error in the person. That means to fine tune the cylindrical power and axis, we use these two. Okay, this is not very important for the MBBS level. So we will exclude these two. We will think about only these two important instruments. One is this occluder, which is used to occlude one eye while you're testing the other eye, and the other one is this. This is the pinhole. We will see what a pinhole is. See, a pinhole is nothing but a dark shield where there is a hole right in the center. The hole measures 1 millimeter. What is the significance of a pinhole? The pinhole is an instrument by which you will be able to detect the best corrected visual acuity by spectacles for that particular patient. What is the principle? This pinhole blocks all the light rays entering the eye and allows only the central small pencil of light rays. So all these rays are straight. They hit the principal axis. So any light ray passing through the principal axis of the eye does not undergo any refraction, isn't it? So you have to go back to your physics of your 9th, 10th class. Okay, so the light rays passing through the principal axis of an optical system does not undergo any refraction. So it passes straight. So because of that, these light rays go and directly hit the retina, isn't it? Retina is the screen. So they are not undergoing any refraction. So by eliminating all the refraction, what you are doing is you are allowing only the central rays of light to fall on the retina. So what is the purpose of doing this? So you will come to know that if there is no interference of any kind of optical problem, then the patient is able to see. That means if there is no refraction, then the patient is able to see. That means whatever he is not able to see is because of a problem of refraction. That is because of an optical problem, not because of a pathology inside the eye. It is because of a problem in refraction. So that's why you will come to know that if suppose a person has say 660, and once you put the pinhole, you will make him read the Snellen's chart again. This time he is able to see 6/6. It means all his all his loss of vision is because of a refractive error. So his best corrected visual acuity with glasses would be 6/6. So that means if you give him the appropriate glasses, he will be able to see the entire 6/6. He will be able to read the last line. So that is the significance of pinhole. So this pinhole is sometimes asked as a very short notes in your theory exam also. In the lenses, definitely this will be kept and they will ask you to recognize it. It's very easy. The moment you see, you will be able to make out that it's a pinhole. What you need to know is what is the purpose of putting a pinhole. It is to know the best corrected visual acuity by glasses. Okay, and what is the size of the pinhole, and that is 1 millimeter in diameter. So these are the things you have to know. Next comes the most important part. They in the exam, what they will do is they'll just throw some lenses at you and ask you to recognize those lenses. So you will have to recognize whether they are spherical or cylindrical lenses, whether they are concave or convex lenses. So that is what I'll be telling you now. So for that, you have to see two important things. You have to look at a particular object through the lens and then look for the movement and look for the size of the image. Okay, so a spherical lens is one in which all the meridians will have the same power. Look at this picture. So these two are spherical lenses. This is a concave spherical lens and this is a convex spherical lens. A spherical lens has the property that on all meridians, that means in all the axes, it is acting in the similar way. That means in all curvatures, the curvature is the same in all axes. So all the rays of light which pass through a spherical lens will come to one particular focus. Okay, so that is a spherical lens. So what do we have to do is, whenever a lens is given to you, you hold the lens very close to your eye. That is most important. Hold the lens close to your eye, and then through the lens, look at a distant object. What kind of object you will be looking? It should be any alphabet or a cross. Okay, so look at a particular object, say a calendar or a poster. Wherever some alphabet is there, you look at that particular object through the lens. How do you keep the lens? You have to keep the lens very close to your eye, and then while you are looking at the object, move that lens up, down, sideways, right side and left side, and then note how the image is moving. Okay, suppose you are moving the lens towards left, and the image of the alphabet or the cross you are looking at is also moving towards the left. It means it is a with motion. Okay, it is called as the with motion. That means you are moving your lens in a particular direction, and when you are looking through it, the image of an object you are looking at it also is moving in the same direction. It is called as the with motion. Okay, then there is another one, that is against motion. That means you are moving the lens towards one side, then the image which you are looking through the lens is moving in the opposite direction. Then it is called as against movement. Okay, you are moving towards the left and the image is moving towards the right. That means it is called as against movement. Suppose you are moving the lens to the left and to the right, but the image does not move anywhere. It means that it is no movement or it is aligned. So why this with motion, against motion is important is, it is important to recognize the lens that is given to you. So this is the thing you have to remember. In case of convex lenses or plus lenses, the images of the object swim to the opposite side of the lens. That means you will have a against movement. This is in case of convex lenses. In case of concave lenses, the images swim to the same side of movement. That means like this, with motion. If you are moving to the left, the image of the object which you are looking through the lens also moves to the left. Suppose it is moving in the opposite direction, then it is a plus lens or a convex lens. If it is moving in the same side, then it is a concave lens or a minus lens. Understood? So this movement can be best perceived when you see a cross, or you can also see a particular an alphabet or a calendar. It's very easy to make out the movement when you see these things. If you see fan or if you see a tree, then it is not so easy. So the best thing for you to do in the exam is to hold the lens. Whenever they give you a lens to you, pick the lens up. First, keep the lens very close to your eye, okay? And then start moving the lens in two directions. One is in the 90 degrees, okay? That means vertically, and observe the image of the object. So look at a particular calendar or a poster. Look at the alphabets or the numbers and see how the numbers are swimming. Suppose when you move up, the numbers are also moving up. then it is a concave lens. When you are moving the lens down and the number also moves down, it is a concave lens. Okay? Oppositely, that is, when you are moving towards the left and the image moves to the right, or when you are moving the lens up and the image moves down, then it is a convex lens. So what you have to remember is this: with motion, concave lens; against motion is convex lens. Okay? When there is no motion, then it means it is a plane lens. There is no movement. Okay? So that is about recognition of the spherical lenses. Now we move on to cylindrical lenses. These are little more complicated than spherical lenses. I told you spherical lenses are ones in which all the action is same in all the meridians. That means in all the axes, be it 90 degrees, 180 degrees, 35, 145, 45, 35, whatever axis, the movement will be the same. Okay, that is a spherical lens. But if you take a cylindrical lens, what happens is, just imagine a pencil. Pencil is a cylinder, isn't it? A glass pencil. So what happens? You take a glass pencil and you cut it a cross section. Then what will happen? So if you take a pencil, only one of its surface is curved, isn't it? The other two are plane. So the curved surface is always opposite to the axis of the pencil. That means if you hold the pencil straight, then it is acting only in the horizontal direction. That means when you are holding the cylinder at 90 degrees, it is acting at 180 degrees. So when you turn this pencil horizontally, the axis of the cylinder will be 180, then it will be acting at 90. So what I want to tell you here is that a cylinder is one in which the power lies only in one meridian. Okay? Look at this. So always the axis will be marked on the cylinder. So if you hold the cylinder like this horizontally, then it is a 180-degree axis cylinder. If you hold the cylinder like this is a 70-degree. If you hold it exactly at 90 degrees, then it will become a 90-degree cylinder. So what is important in cylinder is the cylinder acts in a direction opposite to that of its axis. That means if it is a 180-degree cylinder, it will act only in the 90 degrees. That means what you do is when a cylindrical lens is given to you, you hold it just like how you do your spherical lens also. It's the same. You don't know. When they give you, you don't know whether it is a spherical lens or a cylindrical lens. Okay, so what you do is any lens that is given to you, you just hold it close to the eye, look at a particular calendar or a poster, concentrate on the number or the alphabet, and then start moving the lens up, down, and sideways. That means in 90 degrees and in the 180 degrees. If it is a spherical lens, there is movement in both the axes. But if it is a cylindrical lens, then there will be movement only in one axis. In which axis? In the axis that is opposite to that of the cylinder. Okay? So, and another very easy way of recognizing a spherical lens and a cylindrical lens is that in a cylindrical lens, the axis is always marked like this. If you take a spherical lens, see, there is no marking of axis, isn't it? There will be only plus or minus. But unfortunately, what will happen is this will be closed. So you will not be able to make out what is the lens. But then the axis is never closed. The axis will be there. Only this part will be plastered and it will be closed so that you can't make out. But this marking will be there. This is to indicate that it is a cylinder. Okay, so this is the axis of the cylinder. So but then you have to confirm it by moving. So when you keep it close to your eye, say keep it at 90 degrees and start moving up down, there won't be any movement. But when you move sideways, there will be movement. So that means that it is a cylindrical lens. Okay, then again, in the cylindrical lens also, you have either a convex lens or a concave lens. So again, your task is to find out whether it is a concave cylinder or a convex cylinder. How will you find out? Just like how you did for spherical lenses. If it is with movement, that means your image of the object which you are viewing is moving along with your movement, it means it is a concave lens. If it is moving in the opposite direction, then it is a convex lens. Understood? So basically, in a cylinder, the movement will be in any one axis, either 90 or 180. If you are holding a 90-degree cylinder, it will act only in the 180. That means when you move the lens in the 90 degrees, there won't be any movement of the image of the object which you are looking through. Okay, and when you move in the 180 degrees, there will be movement. Suppose you are taking a 180-degree cylinder, then there will be movement only in the 90 degrees, but not in the 180 degrees. So only one axis movement is the most important feature of a cylinder. Okay, so now we will just summarize how you identify the lens. So whenever a lens is given to you, first thing what you will do is hold the lens close to your eye. I'm repeating this again and again and again because if you hold it away from your eye, you will not be able to make out anything in a proper manner because it will give you a telescopic view, telescopic effect. That's why you have to keep it very close to your eye. Okay, and then you focus on a calendar or a poster, look at a particular say a number or an alphabet, and then start moving your lenses. How will you move? Move first in the 90 degrees and then in 180 degrees. If there is movement of your particular image in both the axes, that means the lens you are holding is a spherical lens. If there is movement only in one axis, either in the 90 or at 180, it means the lens you are holding is a cylindrical lens. Next task will be to find out whether the lens is a concave or convex one. So for that, you will look at the image and see for its motion. Okay, if the movement is with your movement of the image is with your movement, that means in the same direction as you move. That means if you move up, the image also moves up, then it is a concave lens. But if you move up, if you move your lens up and the image moves down, then it is a convex lens. Or against movement is a convex lens. Another thing, another important feature is your convex lens are magnifying glasses. So the image you see will be magnified. And concave lenses, they minify the image. That's why the image you see will be a smaller one. But you cannot make out very clearly if a very small numbers are given. That's why it's best to go with the movement and then decide whether it is a concave or convex lens. Understood? So this is how you, this one. Okay, then we have one more thing, that is presbyopia. All of you know what is presbyopia. As the person ages above 40 years, what happens is, I was just telling you about accommodation, right? the power of accommodation decreases because of two factors. One is the lens, our natural lens becomes more stiff and it loses its elasticity. And second thing is your ciliary body becomes weak. So because of both the reasons, the power to accommodate decreases. So then what will happen? The near vision decreases in that person. So for that, what we have to give is we have to give some plus lenses to aid his vision. So these plus lenses are added to his distant lenses. That means whatever is his distant correction will be given to that, your plus correction will be added. So these are called as bifocals. But in modern times, we don't want to have these bifocal glasses because they have a jump effect. Also, they don't look very cosmetically very good. That's why we have what is called as progressive glasses, in which there is distance for far and near, and along with that there is also intermediate distance, which will help in viewing the computers, because we need so much of intermediate distance these days. So the latest for presbyopic correction is the progressive glasses instead of bifocals. Okay. Then we have one more entity called as compound astigmatism. All of you must be knowing what is simple astigmatism and what is compound astigmatism. If it's a simple astigmatism, in simple astigmatism, what happens is one of the meridians makes a point focus on the retina, the other makes in front of the retina. That is simple astigmatism. In case of compound astigmatism, one makes both the axes make their point focus in front of the retina. So this is a compound myopic astigmatism. Similarly, if you have a compound hypermetropic astigmatism, both the 90 and 180 degree meridians make a point focus behind the retina. Okay, so to treat these compound astigmatic lenses, what we use is not a simple cylinder, we use a spherocylinder. That means a combination of a sphere and a cylinder. So these are called as spherocylinders. Okay, so now coming to the last part of today's class, that is, see, in the exam, what they will give you is they will just give you some lenses. You have to recognize what lens it is, recognize whether it is a cylinder or a sphere, and then go for whether it is a spherical concave or a spherical convex, or a cylindrical concave or cylindrical convex lens. So once you have made the diagnosis of the lens, then they will ask you what are the uses of that particular lens. So what I'm doing now is listing the uses of spherical concave, spherical convex, cylindrical concave and cylindrical concave lenses. So you can just note this down or take a photograph of this, okay, because you might not be able to find all this in one place in the textbook. Everything will be there definitely in the textbook, but then you might not be able to find everything in one place. So you can just note down these or take photographs of this. So where are spherical concave lenses used? So they are used in the treatment of myopia. They are used in the treatment of compound myopic astigmatism, also in the treatment of mixed astigmatism. Okay. Then where are the spherical convex lenses used? So they are used in the treatment of hypermetropia, compound hypermetropic astigmatism, mixed astigmatism, in the treatment of presbyopia, in the treatment of aphakia, because aphakic glasses are always plus 10 glasses. Okay, so that, and then there are a few lenses which are used, few convex lenses which are used for diagnostic purposes, that is for fundus examination. So you use plus 70D lenses, plus 90D lenses and plus 20D lenses for fundus examination. That is examination of the retina in ophthalmoscopes. Okay, so these are the clinical uses of convex and concave lenses. We will go to uses of concave cylinder lenses. So this is used in the treatment of simple myopic astigmatism, compound myopic astigmatism, and mixed astigmatism. Convex lenses, convex cylindrical lenses are used in the treatment of simple hypermetropic astigmatism, compound hypermetropic astigmatism, and mixed astigmatism. So basically, your cylindrical lenses are used in treatment of astigmatism, any type of astigmatism. If it is a myopic type of astigmatism, you need to use concave cylinders. If it is a hypermetropic type of astigmatism, you need to use convex cylinders. Understood? Please note down these two important things. And finally, what is this? This is how a glass prescription looks. So whenever you see somebody's glass prescription, so there will be indication of spherical, cylinder, and axis. This is for distant vision. And then to this, near vision is added. So there is a mistake here. This is a 60-year-old person. So they have added +3. So this is a -2 sphere. So to that they have added +3 for correction for near vision. So in effect, the bifocal segment will have +1. Okay. And look at here, the left eye, OS stands for oculosinistra or the left eye. OD stands for oculodextra or the right eye. So in the left eye, the spherical power is -1.5. So they have added +3 for near vision and the net power is +1.5. See, so in a bifocal segment for that particular person in the right eye, it was -1.5 in the distant segment, and in the near segment it is +1 because they have added +3. Okay, so like that. The cylinder remains the same even in the near segment. So this is important. Only the distance, only the spherical gets added. The cylinder remains the same. So this is how you write a glass prescription. This is not important for you for the undergraduation level. Writing a prescription is not important. Just for completion's sake, I have showed you. What is this? Anybody can tell me what this is? Anyone? Anyone from the class? I'm sure at least a few will be knowing what this is.
Intraocular lens.
No. People who have glasses should know it. Anybody who have glasses is seeing. Huh? Yes?
Contact lenses.
Yes, this is contact lens. These are soft contact lenses. Instead of spectacles, you can use for cosmetic purposes. The same correction can be obtained by contact lens also. See, this is how a person puts his contact lens onto his cornea. The effect will be same as that of the spectacles. In fact, it will be slightly better because the field of vision will be full, just like your own eye. Okay, but then contact lens has its own problems of some people being allergic to it, landing up in giant papillary conjunctivitis, and sometimes if you are not hygienic enough, there will be infection. You need to see, this is the case in which you store the contact lens. So, and then there is a fluid which you always dip the contact lens in. You need to change the fluid every day. You need to clean the lenses every day, and you should never wear the lenses for more than 6 or 8 hours continuously. Why? Anybody can tell me? Anybody who has spectacles and who has been using contact lenses will be having this knowledge. Why should
dryness
you
of
not?
the
Like oxygen supply.
Yes, it's not. Yes, yes. Oxygen supply. Yes, because the cornea is an avascular structure. It entirely depends on its oxygenation on the outside atmosphere and the small limbal vessels. Okay, so if you put a lens for long hours, the oxygen that comes from outside decreases, and hence the oxygenation to the cornea decreases, because of which slowly the cornea becomes opaque. What happens is slowly blood vessels will start forming on the cornea. So cornea is avascular, isn't it? So when once blood vessels form on the cornea, it becomes opaque. Okay, so this is about your lenses and contact lenses. If anybody has any kind of doubt, you can ask me. If there is no doubt, we will end the class here.
Ma'am,
Yeah.
it's regarding the question paper. The first question, why cannot it be bacterial corneal ulcer? Because vegetative matter injury with the following presentation could be anything. It could be
No, no.
bacterial or
No. In particular, if there is a vegetative matter injury, there will be most of the times, 99.99999% of the times, it is a fungal infection. That is the reason sir has given farmer while working in his fields has an injury with a grass blade. That's what I keep stressing in the class, that if there is a vegetative injury, okay, once there is a fungal infection, there can be secondary bacterial infection also. But basically, because of a vegetative matter injury, it will lead to corneal, fungal corneal ulcer. People who have written, most of the people actually have written bacterial corneal ulcer. We have taken that into consideration because the complications would be the same, though the signs are different, complications are same. That's why we have awarded some marks. But some people, I don't know why on earth they thought about chemical injuries, and there was one or two people who thought about penetrating trauma. So this is all, see, you have to understand the question. Each and every word in the question will be important whenever such structured questions are given. Very few of the times these kind of structured questions will be there. So that time you have to apply your analysis and then just, okay. Anything else?
Ma'am, why can't it be conjunctivitis? Because discharge is given in the clinical features. And
Yeah.
discharge is anything. It can be watery, mucoid, mucopurulent, anything.
Yeah, okay. Why it is not conjunctivitis? Because in conjunctivitis, there won't be such a severe pain and photophobia. Okay, sir has given pain and photophobia, isn't it? In conjunctivitis,
No,
you
ma'am. Pain, redness, and discharge was given.
pain, redness, and discharge. Okay, yeah. In conjunctivitis, there won't be pain. Okay, pain. In conjunctivitis, the symptoms are mainly irritation and stickiness of the lashes, and then discharge, all these things. Okay, if there is pain, then it is something deeper. Either it can be corneal related problem or uvea related problem. In conjunctivitis, you will not get pain. Okay, there is another very important question for you, that is differential diagnosis of red eye. In that, all these things will be dealt. I think ma'am is taking, Farah madam is taking about this in the next class. Please do attend that class also, so you will be able to make out these things. See, there are hundreds of conditions in ophthalmology, all of them present with similar complaints of redness, watering, discharge. Okay, so you have to take into consideration each and every word in the question. That's why. So they said farmer by occupation, while working in the fields, had an injury with the grass. and after that he developed pain, redness, and discharge. It goes in favor of a corneal ulcer and not simple conjunctivitis. Okay, and once you know that it is corneal ulcer, you have to decide whether it is a mycotic ulcer or a bacterial ulcer. The clinching thing for the diagnosis here is a farmer and injury with grass. Okay, so this will tell you that it is a fungal corneal ulcer. I think very few people in the class have got it right. Anything else? All other questions, people have written it